Welcome to HFY Genesis. You're about to experience an epic military sci-fi adventure. A tale of war, survival, and humanity's unstoppable rise. If you love cinematic storytelling, tactical warfare, and powerful characters, this is for you. Support this hard work. Like, comment, and subscribe to keep the battles going and bring more stories to life. Now strap in, soldier. War is upon us. The UHS Resolute, a Terran diplomatic vessel, drifted into Zelthar 9's orbit, its sleek silver hull reflecting the twin suns of the system. It was an unarmed ship, a clear declaration of humanity's goodwill. Inside the diplomatic chamber, Ambassador Elias Grayson sat with his hands clasped on the polished table. The air was tense, too tense. Opposite him sat Overlord Zetal, Supreme Commander of the Korthan Dominion. At nearly 9 feet tall, the Korthan's scaled hide gleamed under the dim blue lighting. His golden reptilian eyes studied Grayson like a predator toying with prey. Behind Zetal, 2 Korthan honor guards stood motionless, their barbed ceremonial halberds crossed over their chests. The Korthan were a warrior race, their empire spanning hundreds of conquered worlds. But this meeting was meant to be different. The Korthan had reached out. They had, for the first time, expressed interest in diplomacy. A lie. "We appreciate this opportunity, Overlord Zetal," Grayson began, keeping his voice steady. "The Terran Dominion believes peace between our civilizations is not only possible, but beneficial." Zetal's lips curled into what might have been a smirk. "Does your kind truly believe that words matter?" Grayson tensed. "Your transmissions stated an interest in negotiation. I was led to believe the Korthan wished to discuss terms for a ceasefire along the outer colonies." Zetal leaned forward, the table creaking under his weight. "Human," he hissed. "This was not an invitation." Before Grayson could react, the ship shook violently. A thunderous explosion ripped through the hull, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The lights flickered and the artificial gravity lurched. The guards behind Zetal barely flinched. The Overlord rose to his full, towering height. This was a declaration. The Korthan had never come for peace. They had come for war. A trap sprung. The Terran fleet ambushed. The distress signal from the Resolute barely made it to Terran High Command before it cut to static. Above Zelthar 9, the Terran 7th Fleet floated in formation. Nearly 40 capital ships, positioned defensively in preparation for the diplomatic mission. On the bridge of the UHS Retribution, the fleet's flagship, Admiral Garrick Vos stood with his arms crossed, staring at the tactical display. Something was wrong. "Sir," Lieutenant Sloan said, his hands moving quickly over the console, "we just lost contact with the Resolute." Vos' jaw tightened. "Get me visuals. Now." The view screen flickered to life, and Vos' stomach dropped. The UHS Resolute was burning. Chunks of debris floated in space, its once pristine hull now riddled with holes. Fires raged inside the ship's exposed decks, an escaping atmosphere vented into the void. Then, the sensor alarm screamed. "Admiral!" Sloan's voice was sharp. "We've got multiple Korthan warships decloaking. They're surrounding us." On the tactical display, hundreds of Korthan vessels appeared like ghosts in the dark. They had been hiding in stealth mode, waiting for the fleet to lower its guard. They had lured the Terrans here. Commander Juno Cade, the Retribution's executive officer, turned sharply toward Vos. "This was an ambush from the start." Vos' gaze hardened. "Of course, it was." He turned back toward his crew, his voice like steel. "Battle stations, now. First blood, the battle begins." The Korthan opened fire first. Blazing plasma lances tore through the void, slamming into the shields of the nearest Terran ships. The UHS Avalon, a battle cruiser, took a direct hit to its engines. The ship buckled, fire and debris spewing into space before it was torn apart in a chain reaction of explosions. "Shields at 70%, a crew member shouted. Vos gritted his teeth. "Return fire! All batteries! Fire at will!" The Retribution's railguns thundered, unleashing a storm of hypervelocity slugs that ripped into the Korthan front line. Several enemy frigates exploded on impact. their hulls shattered by the sheer force of kinetic energy. But more ships were closing in. Too many. "We need to regroup," Cade shouted over the chaos. Vos' mind raced. The fleet was out of formation, caught in the worst possible position for a large-scale engagement. If they didn't act fast, they would be slaughtered. He made the call. "All ships, fall back to Rally Point Epsilon. Regroup in defensive formation." The fleet began to move, adjusting course even as enemy fire rained down around them. But the Korthan weren't letting them go that easily. The death of a world. The Korthan's true plan. As the battle raged, a new transmission came through. A single holographic feed from Overlord Zai Tal. His golden eyes burned with triumph. "Your fleet is impressive, human," he sneered. "But this war was never about you." Vos' eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you talking about?" Zital's lips curled. Then the view screen changed. Not to the battle, but to Earth. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then the planet's orbital defenses lit up. Not from activation, but from detonations. Explosions rippled across Earth's defense grid, as if something had attacked from within. Vos felt a cold dread creep into his chest. Zital's voice was like a blade. "The true war has already begun. The war has begun, Earth was under attack, and humanity was already losing." Vos turned toward his crew. His voice was stone-cold steel. "Send an emergency transmission to High Command, now." Cade's fingers moved across the console. "We're being jammed." "Then punch through it!" Vos slammed his fist on the console. "We need to warn them." But it was already too late, because this wasn't just an ambush. This was extermination. And humanity had never been in greater danger. The shattered fleet. The UHS Retribution bucked violently as another plasma barrage slammed into its hull. Alarms blared across the bridge, the air thick with tension. The battle was going badly. "Shields at 40%! Lieutenant Sloan shouted over the chaos. Admiral Garrick Vos gritted his teeth. The Terran fleet was in full retreat, desperately trying to regroup after the Korthan ambush. Dozens of ships were already lost. "This was never about us," Vos muttered. His mind raced back to Overlord Zital's final words before the transmission cut out. Earth was under attack. His home, his family, his people. And here he was, trapped on the wrong side of the sector, too far to stop it. He clenched his fists, his voice cold. "Get me a status report. How many ships do we have left?" Sloan's hands flew over the console. "Counting damaged ships? 27, including the Retribution. But Admiral, we've lost more than half our fleet." Cade turned from her tactical display. "Sir, we can't win this fight. We need to break out of this sector. Fast." Vos inhaled sharply. They had two choices. 1. Stay and fight, knowing they were outnumbered. 2. Escape and regroup, abandoning Zelthar 9 and their dead, but living to fight another day. He hated this choice, but there was only one right answer. "Order all ships to disengage," he said, his voice firm. "We break through their blockade and jump to the nearest relay point. We have to get back to Earth." Cade nodded, though her expression was grim. "And if the Korthan follow," Vos' eyes darkened, "then we lead them straight into a trap." Breaking through. Humanity's desperate gambit. The Terran fleet shifted course, angling toward an unstable asteroid belt at the edge of the system. The Korthan ships moved to intercept. "They're adjusting formation," Sloan shouted. "They're going to cut us off." Vos expected that. "Cade, deploy the Viper squadrons. Have them harass the enemy's flanks. Force them to shift their line." "Yes, sir!" The Retribution's fighter bays opened, releasing waves of sleek, Viper-class starfighters. They streaked through the void, weaving between the larger capital ships and unleashing swarms of missiles into the enemy ranks. The Korthan ships faltered just slightly, but it was enough. Vos seized the moment. "Now, all ships, full burn! Break through!" The Terran fleet surged forward, plasma fire and railgun slugs tearing through the chaos. The Retribution's engines roared, propelling the massive warship past the burning wreckage of fallen allies. One by one, the remaining Terran ships punched through the Korthan blockade. "We're clear!" Cade called. "Jump now!" Vos barked. The Retribution's warp drive activated, and in an instant, the battlefield vanished. Regrouping at Sigma 4, the last stand begins. The Terran fleet emerged from warp into the quiet void of Sigma 4, an uninhabited star system near Earth's outer defense perimeter. The silence was deafening. "Report," Vos ordered. Kate exhaled, her hands shaking slightly. "All ships accounted for. We lost 2 more cruisers during the jump." 17 ships left, Sloan muttered. "This isn't a fleet anymore. It's a funeral procession." Vos ignored the weight in his chest. "What's the status of Earth?" Sloan worked furiously at his console, patching into the Dominion's secure military network. A moment later, a holographic display of the Sol system appeared. Vos's blood ran cold. The orbital defenses were in ruins. Earth's primary defense fleet had been crippled, and enemy ships were still pounding away at the few remaining bastions. "This wasn't just an attack," Cade whispered. "This was a full-scale invasion." Vos's hands curled into fists. He had spent his entire career preparing for war. But not like this. Not when humanity was already losing. A grim realization settled over the bridge. They were the last major fleet left. If they failed now, Earth was lost. The choice that would decide humanity's fate. The crew looked to Vos, waiting, hoping. They needed a plan. Vos stared at the holographic map, his mind working at blistering speed. They could launch a direct assault on the enemy fleet, a high-risk maneuver, but if they hit the enemy's command ship, they might disrupt the invasion. They could attempt a covert infiltration. If they could land a strike team on Earth's surface, they might be able to reactivate planetary defenses. They could send out a distress signal, call for reinforcements from deep space colonies, but there was no guarantee anyone would get there in time. Every second they hesitated, more people died. Vos made his decision. He turned toward the crew, his voice unshaken. "This war isn't over. We're going back, and we're taking Earth back with us." Sigma 4 system, the last hope of Earth. The UHS Retribution floated in the dark void of Sigma 4, surrounded by the battered remnants of the 7th Fleet. The ship's hull bore the scars of their desperate retreat, and across the fleet, engineers worked frantically to patch hull breaches, restore systems, and prepare for what came next. In the war room, Admiral Garrick Vos stood before a massive holographic display of the Sol system, studying the real-time battle unfolding around Earth. The situation was grim. Earth's orbital defense grid was crippled. What was left of the Terran home fleet was locked in a losing engagement against the overwhelming Korthan invasion force. Enemy troop carriers had already breached the atmosphere, deploying legions of Korthan shock troops to the surface. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Vos turned to Commander Juno Cade, his second-in-command. "We don't have time for a prolonged engagement," he said. "We hit them fast and hard, break their fleet, cut off their ground forces. We take Earth back, or we die trying." Cade nodded, her expression fierce. "We'll need a 2-pronged approach, a fleet assault to cripple their command structure, and a planetary strike team to disrupt their ground forces." "Agreed," Vos said. "We don't have the numbers to win in a direct slugfest, but if we can eliminate their high command, their forces will fracture." Sloan, the fleet's tactical officer, exhaled sharply. "We're outnumbered at least 5-1. Even with an element of surprise, we need something big to turn the tide." Vos looked at the tactical display, his mind racing. Then, an idea formed. A dangerous, desperate, and utterly insane idea. "We use the moon as a weapon." The plan, turning Luna into a war machine. The Luna Defense Array, built into the moon's surface, was one of humanity's oldest planetary defense networks, a relic from the early Terran wars. Though many of its railguns and orbital cannons had fallen into disrepair, the core systems still existed. If they could reactivate it, they could turn Earth's moon into an automated battleship, one powerful enough to gut the Korthan invasion fleet. "How do we even get inside?" Cade asked. "The Korthan must have secured every key location on Luna by now." Vos turned to Captain Dane Richter, leader of the elite Helljumpers, Earth's most feared orbital drop shock troopers. Richter grinned. "Leave that to us." The Helljumpers were specialists in high-risk orbital insertions, and if anyone could breach the Luna Defense Network, it was them. Vos looked at his team. "All right, here's the plan. The fleet assault, The Retribution and the remaining 7th Fleet will engage the Korthan head-on, drawing their fire and clearing a path to Luna. 2. The Infiltration. The Hell Jumpers will deploy in a stealth insertion, break into the Luna defense network, and reactivate its weapon systems. The Kill Shot. Once the Moon's cannons are online, they will decimate the Korthan fleet. One strike, one chance. This would be humanity's last stand. The assault begins, the 7th Fleet's final charge. The Terran fleet roared out of warp, emerging on the fringes of Earth's battle zone. The Korthan fleet reacted instantly. Dozens of plasma batteries lit up the void as enemy battleships repositioned, bringing their weapons to bear. "Here they come!" Sloan shouted. Vos stood firm, eyes locked on the enemy's formation. "All ships, advance and engage!" The Retribution's cannons thundered, launching a devastating Mach volley that ripped through the first Korthan dreadnought. The sky ignited. Human cruisers and destroyers weaved between enemy formations, releasing waves of nuclear-tipped torpedoes and railgun slugs. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield, but the Korthan weren't holding back either. A wave of plasma fire erupted from their capital ships, carving through the UHS Valiant, a Terran destroyer. The ship detonated in a brilliant fireball. "Valiant is gone," Cade shouted. "Stay in formation," Vos barked. "We hold the line until Luna is online." Hell Jumpers, infiltration on Luna. Above Luna, the Hell Jumpers deployed. Captain Dane Richter and his team dropped from high orbit, their thrusters burning hot as they descended at terminal velocity toward the abandoned control stations of the Luna Defense Network. Anti-air defenses lit up the sky, but the Hell Jumpers weaved through the chaos, their armor reinforced against the hellfire raining down. They touched down hard, weapons raised. Korthan shock troops were already waiting for them. A brutal firefight erupted across the lunar surface, tracer rounds and plasma bolts cutting through the dust-filled sky. "Richter to command," Dane barked. "We're pinned down at the main control hub. Need 30 more seconds to breach the defense grid." "Make it 20, Vos growled over comms. "We can't hold this line forever." Richter gritted his teeth. "Understood." With a roar, the Hell Jumpers charged forward, cutting through the Korthan forces with precision gunfire and brutal close-quarters combat. They reached the control station and hacked into the Luna Defense Network. "Reactivating system now," Richter called. "Powering up the railguns." The moon fires back, humanity's secret weapon. "Awakens back on the Retribution," Sloan gasped. "Sir, Luna's defense systems are coming online." Vos turned toward the viewport. The moon's surface erupted with light as long dormant railguns, missile silos, and plasma turrets came to life. The Korthan fleet hesitated. For the first time in the battle, they weren't the ones in control. "All Luna platforms are armed," Richter confirmed. "Targeting Korthan fleet, firing now." The moon unleashed hell. Massive railgun slugs tore through the void, impacting Korthan battleships with the force of asteroids. Plasma turrets fired in synchronized bursts, cutting down enemy formations. The Korthan command ship took a direct hit, its shields collapsing in a fiery detonation. The battle shifted instantly. With their high command destroyed, the Korthan fleet fractured. Some ships fled, others fought desperately, but their cohesion was broken. Vos seized the moment. "All ships! Pursue and annihilate them." The Terran fleet surged forward, pressing the advantage. One by one, the invaders fell. Victory, but at what cost? The battle was over. The Korthan fleet lay in ruins, and Earth was free, for now. On the bridge of the Retribution, Vos exhaled. He had won. But this wasn't the end. Cade looked at him. "Sir, if they attacked Earth this way, then this war is bigger than we thought." Vos nodded grimly. The Korthan weren't just here for conquest. They were here for extermination, and humanity had only seen the first wave. "Prepare the fleet," Vos said. "We take the fight to them. Aftermath of the battle for Earth, a hollow victory." The UHS Retribution drifted in low Earth orbit, its once pristine hull scarred and scorched from battle. Surrounding it were the shattered remains of both Terran and Korthan warships, debris fields stretching for thousands of kilometers. The battle for Earth had been won, but at a terrible cost. Admiral Garrick Vos stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic display of the Sol system. He had spent his entire career preparing for war, but this was not the war he had planned for. Cade, his second-in-command, stepped beside him. "We took down their fleet, but this doesn't feel like a victory." Vos's jaw tightened. "Because it's not. This was just the first wave." Across the war room, Lieutenant Sloan was frantically working at his console. His face was pale. "Sir," he said, voice tight with urgency, "I just decrypted a Korthan data packet from one of their fallen warships." Vos turned sharply. "What does it say?" Sloan hesitated. Then his fingers flew across the console, bringing up a holographic projection of Korthan fleet movements. A massive invasion force was mobilizing on the outer edges of the Orion Arm. Not just another fleet, a full-scale armada. Vos's stomach turned to ice. "They're sending a second wave." Cade clenched her fists. "How big are we talking?" Sloan swallowed. "Estimates show at least 4 battle groups, each larger than what we just faced. And..." His voice trailed off as the data auto-translated the invasion directive. A single phrase flashed across the screen. "Extinction protocol activated." The war for Earth was never about conquest. It was about extermination. Vos's voice was low, deadly. "They're coming to wipe us out." The War Council, deciding humanity's fate. The UHS Retribution's war room was filled with the highest-ranking military officials and strategists from what remained of the Terran Dominion. The air was thick with tension. Fleet Admiral Vincent Callahan, the highest-ranking officer in the Dominion, stood at the head of the table. His expression was grim. "You're telling me that what we just fought was only a vanguard force?" Callahan asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Vos nodded once. "Yes, sir, and the next wave will make this one look like a skirmish." Callahan exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "We barely survived the first assault. We've lost half the fleet, and Earth's defenses are crippled." General Samantha Raleigh, head of Terran ground forces, leaned forward. "We need to start reinforcing key strongholds on Earth. If they get boots on the ground in full force, we're finished." Callahan shook his head. "That's assuming we even survive the next space engagement. We can't fight an armada of that scale." Silence hung over the room. Vos broke it. "Then we don't fight them head-on," he said. All eyes turned to him. "We can't win a full-scale engagement," Vos continued. "But we can bleed them dry before they reach Sol." Callahan raised an eyebrow. "You're proposing a defensive war of attrition against an empire that outnumbers and outguns us?" Vos leaned forward. I'm proposing we turn this war into hell for them. Operation Eclipse, humanity's counterattack." The tactical hologram flickered, displaying the outer sectors of the Orion Arm. "We know their fleets are gathering here," Vos said, pointing to a cluster of systems on the Korthan border. "If we let them reach Sol, we're dead. But if we hit them before they launch the next wave, we can cripple their supply lines, disrupt their command structure, and stall their invasion." Callahan frowned. "You want to go on the offensive?" Vos' expression was ice. "Yes, we take a strike force behind enemy lines. We hit their logistics hubs, their shipyards, anything that fuels their war machine. We make them bleed." General Raleigh leaned back, considering. "That's insane, but it might be the only way," Cade added. Sloan adjusted the tactical map. "The best target for a preemptive strike would be Harkon 7, a major Korthan supply depot. If we take it out, we can starve their invasion forces before they reach Sol." Callahan exhaled. Then slowly he nodded. "All right, Vos. You've got one fleet to pull this off. You better make it count." Assembling the strike force, the UHS Retribution was joined by the most elite ships of the Dominion, a task force of 20 warships, each crewed by battle-hardened survivors of the first battle. The Helljumpers, led by Captain Richter, were deployed for special operations. This wasn't just a mission. This was humanity's last chance at survival. The fleet jumped to warp, heading straight for enemy territory. Harkon 7, the heart of the Korthan war machine. The Korthan supply world of Harkon 7 was a fortress world, its skies filled with war factories, shipyards, and orbital defense platforms. As the Terran fleet exited warp, the enemy was caught off guard. "All ships, attack!" Vos roared. The assault began. Torpedoes, railgun slugs, and kinetic bombardments rained down on the Korthan strongholds. The orbital shipyards exploded, sending debris crashing into the planet's surface. The Retribution punched through enemy defenses, wreaking havoc on their logistics hubs. On the ground, the Helljumpers infiltrated Korthan command bunkers, disabling planetary defenses and uploading viruses into enemy networks. The battle was brutal. The Korthan fought fiercely, but they had been caught unprepared. Within hours, Harkon 7 was reduced to a burning ruin. And for the first time, the Korthan realized humanity wasn't just surviving, they were fighting back. As the Terran fleet regrouped, a new transmission came through. Overlord Zetal's face appeared on the main view screen. He was furious. "You think this act of defiance matters?" he snarled. "You think you can stop what's coming?" Vos stared him down. "We just did." Zetal bared his fangs. "Then you have sealed your fate. The High Council has ordered your species' eradication." The transmission cut out. Sloane's hand shook. "Sir, I'm detecting a massive energy surge in the Korthan home sector." A new threat was emerging, and this time, it wasn't just a fleet. Something far worse was coming. Vos exhaled. His hands tightened into fists. "Prepare for the next phase. This war is far from over." A looming threat. The Korthan High Council responds. The UHS Retribution and its strike fleet had done the impossible. Harkon 7 lay in ruins, its shipyards burning, supply chains shattered. The first major Terran counteroffensive had been a success, but humanity had little time to celebrate. Aboard the Retribution, the war room was dead silent as a newly intercepted Korthan transmission played on the main holoscreen. Overlord Zetal stood in a vast chamber of obsidian and gold before an assembly of Korthan High Lords, the true rulers of the Korthan Dominion. Their serpentine faces were unreadable, their gleaming red eyes fixed on the Overlord, their massive forms draped in ceremonial war armor. Zetal knelt before them, fists clenched. "The humans have struck Harkon 7, he reported. "They have proven more resourceful than anticipated." A deep, guttural voice filled the chamber. "And what do you suggest, Overlord?" Zetal raised his head. "They are stubborn, but they are not invincible. Their fleets are fractured, their world is vulnerable. The final protocol must be initiated." The High Lords were silent for a long moment. Then the chamber shook as massive doors groaned open. Behind them in a cold, dark vault, something stirred, something ancient, something inhuman. A single word echoed through the chamber. "Awaken the Abyss." The Terran Dominion's last chance. A hidden power. Back on the Retribution, silence followed the transmission. Cade turned to Vos, her voice low. "What the hell does that mean?" Vos exhaled slowly, staring at the holomap of the Korthan home sector. "They're preparing something we haven't seen before," he said. "A final weapon." Sloane paled. "Sir, if the Korthan are pulling out all the stops, we may not have the firepower to stop them." A grim realization settled over the room. The strike on Harkon 7 had delayed the invasion, but it hadn't stopped it. The full weight of the Korthan war machine was still bearing down on Earth. They needed something more, something powerful enough to turn the tide of war. "There's one place we haven't looked," Vos said finally. A new map appeared on the screen, a long-forgotten sector, buried in classified Dominion archives, a place no Terran had set foot in for nearly 5,000 years. The room went deathly silent. Cade's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I am," Vos said. The map zoomed in, revealing an ancient name etched in forgotten records. Arc 7, the Lost Terran Vault. The place where, according to legend, humanity once built something capable of defying extinction itself. And now, it was their last chance. Journey to the Ark. Secrets of the Old Empire. The Retribution and its fleet burned through space at maximum warp, racing toward the dead system of ARK-7. As the ship neared the sector, something strange happened. The stars themselves flickered as if bending around an invisible force. Sloane frowned. "Sir, sensors are acting strange. We're detecting gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist." Vos exchanged a glance with Cade. "This place was erased from history for a reason," Cade murmured. Ahead of them, a world came into view. A planet shrouded in black storms, its surface covered in titanic ruins, remnants of an age long forgotten. They had arrived at the last stronghold of the first Terran Imperium, but they weren't alone. As the Retribution entered orbit, the fleet's alarms blared. "Contacts!" Sloan shouted. "Unknown vessels, closing fast!" Vos' fists clenched. "Korthan?" Sloan's eyes widened. "No, sir. They're human." The bridge crew froze. "That's impossible," Cade whispered. But then the incoming ships hailed them, and a voice older than Earth itself crackled over the comms. "Welcome home, Terrans. We have been waiting." The awakening of the Warborn. In the depths of ARK-7, Vos and his team descended into the Lost Vaults, guided by the mysterious remnants of an ancient human faction. The air was thick with history, monuments to warriors who had once wielded powers beyond modern understanding. And at the heart of the vault they found it, a machine unlike anything ever built, a weapon designed not just to win wars, but to rewrite them. The holographic AI of an ancient warlord flickered to life. "You have come seeking salvation," the AI intoned, "but power always comes with a price." Vos stepped forward. "Whatever the cost," he said, "humanity will pay it." The AI studied him for a long moment. Then, with a voice that shook the vault, it spoke a single word. "Then let the Warborn rise again." Meanwhile, deep in Korthan's space, something monstrous stirred. A fleet of massive biomechanical ships, each one pulsating with a dark, living intelligence. The Abyss Protocol had been activated, the Korthan had unleashed their ultimate weapon, and now the final war had begun. ARK-7, the rise of the Warborn. The halls of ARK-7 thrummed with ancient power, the air thick with static electricity as forgotten systems came back to life. The massive chamber stretched for kilometers, lined with towering war machines and holographic consoles displaying forgotten battle strategies from a war that predates the Dominion itself. Admiral Garrick Vos stood before the central interface, flanked by his officers, Helljumper Captain Dane Richter, and the mysterious Warborn, the last remnants of the ancient Terran Imperium. The holographic AI, its form an imposing silhouette of a warrior clad in warforged armor, stared down at them. "You stand on the edge of extinction," the AI intoned, its voice resonating through the chamber. "But humanity has faced annihilation before, and we did not kneel." Vos clenched his fists. "We don't intend to kneel now." The AI regarded him for a long moment, then gestured toward the vault beyond the control deck. "Then the Warborn shall rise once more." The massive doors rumbled open, revealing an armory of nightmare machines, warships, battle mechs, and weapons forged in an age of conquest. At the heart of it stood the Excalibur, an impossibly massive dreadnought, its hull plated with an unknown alloy, pulsating with the same energy that bent the fabric of space itself. The last battleship of the Imperium, a weapon that could change the fate of the war. Korthan homeworld, the Abyss awakens. Far beyond Terran space, in the heart of the Korthan Dominion, the High Lords stood in silence. Above them, in the darkness of their forbidden system, it stirred. A fleet of living warships, their biomechanical hulls shifting and pulsing, drifting free of their containment. The Abyss Protocol was no mere fleet. It was a horror older than the Korthan themselves, a creation that even their warlords feared to awaken. But humanity had pushed them too far. The abyssal dreadnoughts came online, and they moved toward Earth. The final battle, Earth's last defense. The Terran home fleet held low orbit over Earth, their warships battered, their crews exhausted. Admiral Vincent Callahan, now leading the final defense of humanity, stood on the bridge of the Titan, staring into the endless void. Beyond the Sol system, the abyssal fleet arrived. The ships were not Korthan, they were something else. Twisted monstrosities of flesh and metal, their hulls pulsing like beating hearts, their weapons writhing like living things. A single guttural voice echoed through every Terran transmission, ancient and incomprehensible. A message of death. Callahan exhaled. Here they come. Arrival of the Warborn, the return of humanity's lost legacy. As the abyssal fleet prepared to fire, something shifted in deep space. A warp rift exploded open. From it, a fleet unlike anything seen in thousands of years emerged. Excalibur led the charge, flanked by Warborn battlecruisers, helljumpers in sleek new drop pods, and an armada forged from the last remnants of the Imperium. On the bridge of the Excalibur, Vos gripped the command console. His fleet had returned. "All ships," he said, his voice like iron, "engage." The clash of titans. War beyond imagination. The first exchange shattered the void. The abyssal fleet unleashed waves of gravitational distortions, their attacks bending space-time itself, consuming entire squadrons in black implosions. But the Excalibur fired back. Its main gun, a weapon of impossible scale, fired a single lance of light that cut through the darkness like a blade through flesh. One of the abyssal dreadnoughts exploded, its corpse-like hull breaking apart in eerie silence. The battle erupted into chaos. The ground war, helljumpers versus the abyss. On Earth's surface, the helljumpers, led by Captain Richter, launched their final drop. They descended straight into the heart of the Korthan's main ground base, cutting through enemy forces in brutal close-quarters combat. The abyssal forces had reached the surface, their twisted forms reanimating fallen soldiers, their presence warping reality itself. Richter and his troopers fought through the nightmare, activating Earth's lost planetary defense grid to purge the infestation. The final move, ending the war in one stroke. On the Excalibur, Vos stared at the abyssal flagship, an entity so massive it warped the very stars around it. Sloane's voice was tense. "Sir, if that thing reaches Earth, we lose." Vos knew what had to be done. "We take it out." "Sir?" Cade blinked. "We'd need a planet cracker too." "We have one," Vos interrupted, "and we're standing on it." The bridge fell silent. Then Sloane realized. "Sir, you mean to fire the Excalibur's core? A weapon never meant to be used. A weapon that could end worlds." Vos looked at his crew. "Prepare the Omega Cannon." Firing the Omega Cannon. The end of the abyss. The Excalibur's hull began to glow, energy building in its depths. A weapon forged in an age of conquest, now aimed at the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. The abyssal flagship sensed it. It began to retreat. Too late. "Fire!" Vos commanded. The Excalibur unleashed its wrath. A beam of energy brighter than a dying star exploded from its hull, consuming the abyssal flagship. The horrific monstrosity screamed in the void as it was erased from existence. The abyssal fleet collapsed. The war was over. Humanity's new dawn. In the aftermath, the survivors stood on Earth's surface, staring up at the sky. The war had changed everything. The Terran Dominion was reborn. The Warborn had returned. And Admiral Garrick Vos, the man who had led humanity through its darkest hour, now stood before a future rewritten. Cade looked at him. "So, what now?" Vos smirked. "Now, we take the fight to them." Humanity was no longer just surviving. They were ascending. And that concludes this epic HFY sci-fi story. Did you enjoy the battles, the strategy, and humanity's triumph? Let me know in the comments. Like this video to support more epic storytelling. Subscribe to HFY Genesis for more action-packed sci-fi stories. Share this adventure with fellow sci-fi fans. Your support fuels the war machine. See you in the next battle. Humanity endures. On fire.